Hi guys, very welcome back to Mentour, yet another video podcast. As always, I hope you're doing great. Big thank you and thumbs up to all of you guys who have been contributing with questions and feedback to my previous videos. It's great, I really appreciate it, and I build quite a lot of my future content on the feedback that you're getting me, the questions that you have for me. So keep doing that. Whatever questions you might have, there's no stupid questions, okay? Just send them in and I will be answering them directly on the channel itself, or I might be doing a podcast about it, which is exactly what I'm doing today. So for the last couple of months, I have been receiving a lot of questions on the subject of how to prepare to start flight training. What kind of subjects do you need to study in school? Is there anything special that you can do? And what kind of steps should you go through before you start your flight training? That's what today's podcast is about. I urge you all guys who are interested in this to stay on to the end. At the end, I'm going to add on a couple of, well, they're not going to be live links because YouTube doesn't allow me to put live links in, but I am going to put a couple of internet addresses in to different websites that you guys can go to self-study this. So what I'm going to give you is kind of an overview of what you should be thinking about. And then you are going to have to go into the internet, go to the flight schools yourself and study this in depth in order to get all the information you need. Because there's no way that I can, in 12, 13, 14 minutes or whatever this might take, explain all of it to you. But I can give you a structure, and that's exactly what I'm doing. So stay on, stay tuned to the end, otherwise you might miss out on something that you didn't want to miss, right? So the first thing we're going to talk about is what to study. So let's say you're 12, 13 or 15 years old and you want to start preparing yourself for flight school. Right, here it's a very easy thing for me to say. It's study everything that you can possibly find. Okay, sounds nice enough? Basically, what I mean is that I want you to go out on the internet. You have started well by going to my channel. There is loads of good YouTube channels out there that will give you an insight into the business, or other aviation related YouTube channels that might give you just a sense of what it is you're getting yourself into. So read blogs on the internet, go to all of the official websites. I would recommend you to go to faa.com, for example. There's quite a lot of material on there, including books that you can read or links to ebooks that you can download and you can read. And if you get your hands on, for example, a private pilot license theoretical package, I'm sure that there are loads of them available out on the internet, then read that as well. Because what you want to try to do is you want to try to make a good foundation for your aviation knowledge. So that means that there's no point in starting to, for example, read up on how to fly a 737 if you don't know the aerodynamical principles of flight to start with. So start by reading up on all of these things, get an insight into the business, go to open days on flight schools, for example, and talk to instructors, talk to me, send me questions, talk to other pilots that you might come in contact with, check out the internet, read magazines and any aviation books. There is a book called, I think it's called Handling the Big Jets, which is an old classic that I recommend. But things like that. But try to get yourself a good overall view of what it is you're getting yourself into. And if you can get the first part of the theoretical package, like the PPL package, then read that as well, because that will give you the foundations that you need in order to achieve higher and higher levels of knowledge later on. Okay, but I want you to have a good foundation to start with. Then, second, the academical requirements. Okay, I'm getting loads of questions on this, and the problem with answering these questions is that they are different in different countries, and they differ between different airlines and flight schools and everything. But everyone that's asking me if you need a university degree or not, I always say that it's a great idea for you to get a university degree if you can. Okay. The reason for that is that it's fantastic to have something to fall back on in case something would happen to your aviation dream. It might be that you find out after having started your training that it's not for you, or something else might happen that stops you from getting into the business. And if you have a university degree to fall back on, at least you have a safety net there. The second reason is that it is a requirement in a lot of airlines, especially in the United States, but also it's becoming more and more common in Europe and in Asia, that you need a degree of some sort in order to apply for the airlines to start with. So the only requirement, the indications that I've got when I've been Googling the internet myself is, it seems like in the States it's recommended to get a bachelor's degree. Okay. So a bachelor's degree seems to be a good thing to have if you're getting into the business, because there might be regional airlines or smaller airlines that doesn't require you to have a bachelor's degree, but the big boys tend to have that as a requirement. As such, it's better to have it before than having to read it in after you've done your training, and the only thing you want is to get your hands onto that aircraft and start flying it. In the UK, these are still not requirements, they are indications of what you might need, but it seems like 5 GCSEs and 2 A-levels is what the flight schools are recommending you to get. Okay, so next question is, in what subjects? Well, the subjects that you would generally benefit from are natural science subjects, such as physics, mathematics, to some level also communication subjects. There might be a good idea to have some geography, and with geography I don't only mean knowing where the countries are, but also, you know, what are the political climates in those countries, things like that, because it's going to have a potential impact on your daily life if you're flying from continent to continent. It's a good idea to know what the political kind of climate is if you're going into Asia, or what you should say and not say in different countries and things like that. So geography can be a good thing. Otherwise, natural science subjects, including maths and physics, are good. And the reason they are good is because you will need a fundamental understanding of physics, you know, inertia, air pressure, things like that, in order for you to understand your theoretical subjects once you start with your flight training. So aim for those natural science subjects. Communication can be good. CRM, as in crew resource management, related subjects that has to do with human interaction is always good as well. But the reason I'm a little blurry on this is because it, you know, as long as you do well and you have good grades, it doesn't matter that much which subjects that you are taking, okay? These subjects are good because they will relate to your future training. However, it's unlikely that the flight schools will bother much with exactly what subjects you've taken, as long as you can show that you have good academical kind of knowledge, and that your academical level and the way that you can learn is set at a high level, and you show that by the grades that you have achieved. Okay, you don't need to be a wizard when it comes to maths or to mathematics or physics. And with a whiz, I mean that you don't need to be kind of, you know, a genius. You need to be good, and you need to understand it and be able to comprehend it in order to do the job later on. But to be honest, this on a day-to-day basis, and a day-to-day, you know, in my life, for example, is very little math that I actually do. I fly really sophisticated aircrafts. They tend to have very good computers, and the computers are doing all the calculations. You need to have a good knowledge of rules of thumb, you know, calculating approximately how many track miles you need in order to descend and convert energy, things like that. But those formulas are fairly simple, and they are simple for a reason, because you need to be able to do them while you're under quite a bit of pressure. So day-to-day mathematics, not much, you know, not something that I would like you guys to worry too much about. However, if you do have maths, which I do recommend that you do take math subjects, like I said, make sure that you can achieve quite good grades in them, because that might be important when it comes to being accepted into the flight school. Okay. I can only give you general advice on this, and the reason for that is that it's so different if you go to a flight school in Asia or in the UK or in the US or Japan or China or Australia. There's going to be different requirements, and it's up to you guys to check out what those requirements are. You can go out on the internet today and you can find all of this information by a quick Google search on the schools that you're interested in. So do that, okay? And that brings me on to my next point, which is choosing a school. Okay, so choosing a school will be a exercise in how much you can find out about the different schools. There will be 100 schools all over the world that are available to you. Obviously, if you go to a school outside of your own country, you need to make sure that you can get a visa, working visas and stuff like that. But what you should be looking for are schools that have a good reputation. You'll find that out if you look at different internet forums. You will probably find it out by just going to the website and see what kind of quality the website is delivering. You should be contacting the schools. You should be trying to contact previous students on those schools to see what they thought about the training. You should be trying to find out what success rate previous students have had. So have the students that have gone to the school that you're interested in, have a lot of them received a job with an airline later on, or are they all unemployed? You know, things like that is very, very important to find. Obviously, you need to find out what the price of the training is. The reason why there are different prices can differ a lot. It's different in different countries and stuff like that. But, you know, if you find something that is extremely cheap, you should probably be asking yourself, why is it that cheap? Also, if it's really, really expensive, find out why. You want to, if you can, get your training in a flight school that have good relationships with airlines. If they have contact with airlines, that's a big plus. So if you can get into a program that is maybe even part sponsored by an airline, but certainly if they have airline-specific programs, you should be trying to get into those, because if there's a job at the end of your training, it's much better, and it's probably worth paying a little bit more money for an airline-connected flight school rather than someone who doesn't have anything. But if the price difference is 30 or 40,000 euro, then you are going to be the one to have to decide whether or not that is worth it. Okay. When it comes to funding, finding funds for your training, there are different ways. I've talked about this in previous podcasts, and I do refer you to my How to Become a Pilot podcast, for example. But generally speaking, if it's not government funded or if it's not airline funded, you're going to have to pay for it yourself. There are banks that are specialized in giving aviation related loans. You can just Google aviation loans or loans for flight training, and you'll find these ones. Check them out. Same thing there, you have to make sure that they have a good reputation. But if it's a big bank that offers it to you, then it's probably a fairly low risk. If the interest rates are really high, then maybe you will have relatives that you can borrow the funds from. Or you can go the modular way, which is just working and taking your flight training as you go along. But there are different ways. I'm not going to go into depth in how to fund them, but there are definitely ways to find money to fund your training. So there are also scholarships, I should say. There are certain scholarships available. I don't know the names of them, so please don't ask me. But I have seen aviation scholarships around, so you can probably Google that as well. Maybe there are more in certain countries and less in certain countries, but try it out. Google it, see if you can find something. Right, once you have decided on the school you want to go to, you have to do, or it's not mandatory, but I recommend you to do a suitability test. I'm going to give you a link to a suitability test. It's not going to be a live link, but I'm going to write it up here, so you can just note it down on a piece of paper and look it up. Check it out. And I definitely, and I always say this, I recommend everyone to get in to do a suitability test before you start paying for your training, because these guys are trained to see if there's something in your personality that is not suitable to become a pilot. So if they tell you that that's not the case, I would recommend you to follow their advice, because what you don't want to do is pay a lot of money and then find out that you won't be able to get a job out of it. It's very sad to see, and I don't wish that on anyone. So do a suitability test. I do recommend that. Most of the big flight schools, they will give it to you as part of you being accepted into the flight school. Now, the next thing you want to do is, once you have decided and you have signed up with the flight school, and this is really important, and no one actually talks about this, it's prepare your family and friends about what's going to happen to you, because a lot of these flight trainings are extremely compressed. You need to learn a lot during a very short period of time, which means that your family probably won't see you that much. Your friends that are used to you hanging out with them on the weekends might see you much either. So it's a good idea, before you start your flight training, that you do speak to those people that are most important to you and tell them that, listen guys, I might not be able to take part in family functions or as much parties or whatever during the next 2 or 3 years, because I'm really going to focus on this and it's extremely important to me. But also point out that this is only going to be for a limited amount of time. The training, as I said, is very compressed. So if it takes 2 or 3 years of you really hard studying these subjects, then after that you'll be able to resume your normal life more or less. But it's important to tell your friends and family so they don't think that you just suddenly abandon them, okay? And then it's time to start your training. So the way, the success you will have in your training is going to depend heavily on how much of this research you've done, and how much you have prepared by reading up on subjects and things before. Basically, the more you've read up, the more you know, the easier your training will become, and you can focus more of your mental energy on what's new, which is actually handling the aircraft and applying this knowledge that you have attained onto the real thing. Okay, so that would be my kind of short, almost 20 minutes guide to how I would like you guys to do it. So study everything you can get your hands on when you're young. Check out the academical requirements that you need and attain them. The age you're going to need in order to start this generally tends to be 17 to start. Some flight schools have 18 years old, but you need to be 18 to be able to pick the license up in any case. So it's no point starting much earlier than that. Concentrate on the subjects that are natural science, math, physics, possibly communication, geography, things like that. Do a suitability test. Make sure that you do your research when it comes to school. Find your funding in any way that you can find it. There are ways available to you. And then prepare your families and friends before you start your training, and then enjoy the training, guys. It's when I did it, it was probably the funniest period I've had in my life when I did the training. It's a fantastic thing. But at the end here, I'm going to tell you something as well. A lot of people put a lot of emphasis on the exact subjects to study and things. But to be perfectly honest, it's your attitude that's going to decide whether or not you are successful in this business, okay? It's how you choose to go into your training, how you choose to prepare, but also how you are as a person, your attitude towards your colleagues and your friends. Make sure that you're a nice person, that you are helpful, that you are good in group environments, and you're a good communicator, because ultimately that's probably what's going to make you successful or unsuccessful in an airline interview. So keep that in mind, and I wish you the best of luck. I hope this has been helpful for you, and as always, press like, share this video with your friends, and have a fantastic evening. Bye bye.